Russia is falling apart. Chaos, panic, and fear on every front. The Kremlin is losing control. Ukraine's unstoppable counteroffensive smashes through enemy lines. Russian troops flee, tanks burn, and panic spreads across the front. At the same time, Moscow rushes to hide behind its bombers, frantically expanding airbases and preparing for a desperate move. But Ukraine's drones are already hunting, and the next strike could change everything. Far beyond the battlefield, the world trembles. A Russian submarine stalks NATO waters. Europe scrambles its fleets, and one wrong signal could ignite a global firestorm. Meanwhile, in occupied Crimea, fear tightens its grip. Raids, arrests, and brutal repression return under Moscow's lies. And while Putin hides behind walls and propaganda, Ukraine and the United States unveil a new superweapon, faster, deadlier, and smarter than anything the world has ever seen. The countdown has begun. The walls are closing in on the Kremlin, the war is shifting, and Russia's nightmare is only beginning. All the details in our special edition of Hotspot. Ukraine is shattering Russia's front lines, total collapse underway. Ukrainian forces have broken through the enemy's defenses, unleashing chaos deep behind Russian positions. Troops are fleeing in panic, abandoning weapons and armor as their lines crumble under relentless fire. The battles are fierce, close, and merciless, each minute shaping the course of the entire war. Explosive new footage captures the panic, the smoke, and the burning wrecks. A clear sign that the occupiers' control is slipping away. The breakthrough is real, unstoppable, and history is being made. Full coverage in our next report.
The main intelligence directorate of Ukraine is showing off its new equipment and openly announcing serious problems for the occupiers. Thus, the GUR has received several of the latest T-12 boats of Ukrainian manufacture at its disposal. These 12-meter vessels, equipped with the latest navigation and radio equipment, two 800-horsepower engines, a speed of up to 95, and a range of up to 500 kilometers, were handed over to the military by volunteers.
Hello, everyone. Today we are handing over as many as 3 T-12 boats, which will soon be used by our fighters in the special unit. These are 12-meter boats equipped with powerful 400-horsepower engines. The boats can be used for a variety of assigned tasks. These include logistics, standard operations, assault, and evacuation tasks.
Thanks to such Ukrainian boats, scouts have managed to carry out more than one successful special operation behind enemy lines. Now the military promises there will be even more such raids. And it should be noted, for the occupiers, these are far from empty words. The enemy no longer doubts that the armed forces of Ukraine will go on the offensive. And it seems the occupiers have realized that this will happen very soon. That's why the enemy is doing everything it can to prepare to receive thousands of its wounded contract soldiers. This video was filmed deep behind enemy lines by Ukrainian partisans. A hastily constructed building in temporarily occupied Crimea is being designated as a hospital. Russia is being forced to set it up due to massive losses on the Kherson and Zaporizhzhia fronts. The influx of wounded from there has exceeded all expectations. As a result, the currently existing hospitals and field clinics simply can't cope with the demand. Construction of the Sevastopol facility began in October 2022, and it was originally scheduled for completion only at the end of 2026. Now they're trying to finish it in emergency mode. The builders are working in 3 shifts, violating all technological standards. They are cutting corners on materials and safety, which leads to constant accidents at the construction site, according to Ukrainian partisans. Distortions in the structures and problems with the foundation are already visible. However, even under such conditions, wounded Russian soldiers are immensely grateful. After all, it's much better than being finished off by your own side right on the battlefield. By the way, that's exactly what the much-vaunted Russian air defense did just recently with its own fighter jet. It may provide cover, but it doesn't actually protect. The Russians accidentally shot down their own SUSM aircraft while intercepting yet another swarm of Ukrainian drones. Incidentally, such confusion in Russian airspace is only going to become more common in the foreseeable future. And after the military, the Kremlin's air defense will soon start accidentally shooting down its own civilian airliners as well. All thanks to Ukrainian weapons manufacturers who are constantly ramping up the production of strike UAVs and missiles. For example, the Flamingo is already being stockpiled for a large-scale strike on Russia, as announced by Ukrainian authorities in response to Putin's attacks on our energy infrastructure. So it's high time for Moscow and St. Petersburg to start preparing for blackouts.
The Flamingo can cut off electricity and water in any region of Russia. Right now, it's truly just fear, a primal fear about what might happen to them over there.
The preparatory stage for the future attack on Moscow was a nighttime raid on several Russian targets in the occupied territories. Donetsk was also under attack. There, very large and significant explosions were widely reported, most likely occurring at an ammunition depot, causing considerable concern. In addition, drones struck the village of Gvardeyskoye in occupied Crimea. An oil depot caught fire there. And it was loud even in Russia itself. In Sochi, an air raid alert was declared at night. There were explosions and air defense systems were active. The city's mayor confirmed the attack. However, he did not specify whether the Ukrainian drones hit their targets, which gives reason to believe that the Ukrainian armed forces most likely achieved their objective in Sochi. In the same way, the enemy is unable to hide from Ukrainian drones even on the front lines themselves. In the past 24 hours, the Russian army has lost at least 700 soldiers killed and wounded, as well as 5 tanks, 10 armored vehicles, 35 artillery systems, and more than 1,000 drones. Nevertheless, Putin will not give the order to retreat. On the contrary, his generals are only increasing the intensity of the so-called meat assaults on Ukrainian positions.
The tactics remain unchanged. That is, these are small assault groups. 2, 3, 5, or 7 servicemen of the Russian Federation try to break through using some tree lines, advancing toward our front line. But thanks to our aerial reconnaissance teams, we detect them in time. So even as they approach, they come under fire from artillery and collective weapon systems. These include FPV drones and Mavics with drop mechanisms. In other words, we do everything possible to prevent them from reaching our front line so they can't engage our guys in a firefight.
In the past 24 hours, there have been 187 recorded combat engagements between the Ukrainian Defense Forces and Russian troops on the front line. According to the General Staff report, the occupiers carried out up to 100 airstrikes on the positions of Ukrainian units and populated areas, dropping 206 guided bombs. In addition, they conducted 4,553 shellings, 118 of which were from multiple launch rocket systems. And here is how our defenders responded to this.
Over the past day, the aviation, missile forces, and artillery of the defense forces struck 14 areas where enemy personnel, weapons, and military equipment were concentrated, 1 UAV control point, 6 artillery systems, and 1 important facility belonging to the Russian invaders, according to the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine.
And here, our border guards have launched a hunt for the occupiers' vehicles and personnel in the Kursk direction. Our defenders are also harassing the enemy in the Kherson region. The pilots of the drone battalion are leveling enemy positions with their drops, destroying enemy FPV drones on standby, and burning shelters and positions of Russian troops near the second lineman. The Russians' ammunition cache was also hit, along with the personal belongings of the invaders themselves, and the enemy command post in this sector of the front.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism, and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine Today. Join us now.
A fresh high-value target has emerged for Ukrainian drones and ballistic strikes, and Moscow has reacted aggressively. Intelligence indicates a rapid expansion of the Engels 2 airbase. In an unexpected move, Putin has ordered bomber units across the country to mobilize, racing to turn Engels into an oversized strategic hub almost overnight. Early video from the site is already circulating, and Ukrainian intel says it's monitoring every development. The dictator's finger hovers ominously over catastrophic options, but our forces are alert and primed to hit first. The stage is set for a dramatic clash. What is Moscow really planning, and can Ukraine preemptively neutralize this threat? Full coverage coming up next.
Russia is trying to revive its strategic aviation.
In October, Russia is stepping up efforts to expand its main strategic aviation base, Avivector military observer.
New construction is being observed at the Engels 2 airbase. In the northern part, concrete is being poured, additional taxiways are being built, and 12 parking spots are being marked out.
The Engels 2 airbase is one of the main hubs of strategic aviation for the occupying country. It is from there that strategic bombers take off to launch cruise missiles at Ukrainian territory. In addition, a significant amount of missile and aviation weaponry is stored on the base's territory.
These engineering works began back in the spring. The active phase of construction has been ongoing for the past few months. It is likely that this is where the strategic missile carriers Tu-95MS and Tu-160 will be stationed, as well as the frontline bombers Su-34 and the Su-35 fighter jets. And at first glance, it might seem like ordinary construction work, but for military experts, this is a worrying sign. The expansion of the airbase increases the enemy's air force operational capabilities, reduces turnaround time between sorties, raises the number of combat-ready aircraft, and simplifies the logistics of delivering munitions.
These construction works at the Engels 2 airfield are first and foremost a demonstration. After the strike by Ukrainian drones on March 20th, 2023, intensive construction began. In other words, the Russian Federation is actively trying to demonstrate and clearly show that this particular military facility is indeed a significant and high priority. Moreover, it is protected by air defense systems, so this is more of a political signal for a domestic audience rather than an external one such as Ukraine or the United States. It's an attempt to demonstrate that the Russian central government is in control of the situation.
At the same time, work is also being carried out at another airfield, Diaghilevo in the Ryazan region. The aggressor country is trying to restore the mobility of its air force and the density of its deployments, reducing its dependence on individual runways. Additional parking spaces and taxiways make it possible to deploy aircraft more quickly, increase the number of takeoffs, and reduce the time equipment spends in vulnerable positions.
Through such construction work at these military facilities, the Russian Federation is trying to demonstrate that it continues to view so-called missile terror as a priority element of its military political pressure on the leadership of Ukraine. In other words, lacking the ability to achieve real success on the front line, the main focus of the Russian occupation army is on strikes, including with the use of strategic aviation, against infrastructure facilities on the territory of Ukraine and against residential cities.
But expanding the bases is only part of the equation. Aviation requires crews, fuel, munitions, and secure supply lines. Losses among personnel, logistical problems, and international restrictions on components reduce the effectiveness of the new sites. Simply put, more parking spaces do not mean more strikes in the near future.
And considering that the airfield is located about 600 kilometers from the line of contact, 600 kilometers from the notional Russian-Ukrainian border, it is within range of Ukrainian strike drones, as well as other Ukrainian strike capabilities. We're talking about the long-range Neptune. Therefore, if there is indeed confirmed activity of Russian aviation specifically from this airfield, there will be reciprocal responses from the Ukrainian side in the form of strikes against legitimate military targets. And this military airfield is a legitimate military target when it is used, whether by American strike systems if they are supplied, or by a wide range of Ukrainian-made strike systems.
And these airfields have become favored targets for the Ukrainian side. In particular, in March, the Ukrainian armed forces carried out one of the largest attacks on Engels 2. An ammunition depot was hit, and about 96 air-launched cruise missiles intended for several rounds of attacks were destroyed. Strikes on fuel reserves also seriously weakened the enemy's capabilities. And while the enemy tries to expand its infrastructure, Ukrainian defenses are being modernized. If there is even the slightest activity threatening Ukrainian cities, our defenders will once again deliver precise and devastating strikes, depriving Russia of its last remaining aircraft.
The world is on the brink. Reports indicate that Swedish naval forces have confronted a shadowy Russian submarine prowling through the Baltic Sea's international waters. The high-stakes standoff sent shockwaves through Europe. Radar screens lit up, warships scrambled, and analysts are warning that the situation could spiral out of control. What was the Kremlin's secret sub doing so far from home waters? Is this a test of NATO's defenses or the beginning of something far more dangerous? One misstep could ignite a global inferno. The countdown has begun. Stay tuned for the full story.
The Swedish Navy detected a Russian submarine in the Baltic Sea. The military reported this on the social network X. According to the agency, the vessel entered the Baltic through the Great Belt Strait and was later spotted in the Kattegat Strait between Sweden and Denmark. Air Force units and fighter jets escorted the submarine. The Swedes described this episode as nothing more than a routine mission. The Navy did not disclose the name of the vessel. It is only known that it is a multi-purpose diesel-electric submarine of the Kilo class, according to NATO classification. The same class includes the submarine Novorossiysk, with which the Russians recently embarrassed themselves in front of the whole world when it unexpectedly surfaced off the coast of France.
By many characteristics, this is the best submarine not only in the Russian fleet, but in the entire world. Its engine runs more quietly than the sound of the sea outside, which means the vessel can remain undetected on NATO radar screens.
The submarine itself is so well designed that it's no wonder it's called the Black Hole. Detecting this submarine, I think, will be a major problem for any potential adversary.
This is how, 10 years ago, Russian propaganda talked about the lead vessel of Russia's modernized submarine project. The Novorossiysk was built specifically for the Russian Black Sea Fleet. The media enthusiastically claimed that the vessel was capable of sinking an entire group of enemy ships. But now, in 2025, it seems it's getting ready to sink itself.
According to the VCHK GPU, due to damage in the fuel system of the Novorossiysk, which is on combat duty in the Mediterranean Sea, fuel is leaking directly into the bilge. There are no spare parts for repairs or qualified specialists on board the submarine. The crew is unable to fix the malfunction. Because of this serious accident, other problems have started to occur as well. The accumulated fuel in the bilge is an explosive hazard. The source believes that the crew has no other choice but to start opening the bilge right in the sea.
In order to, as they say, solve the problem, they will have to, there's no other option, they will have to pump this water-fuel mixture overboard. Well, basically, yes, of course, if something like this starts happening, and there's no doubt that the submarine is being watched by aircraft, anti-submarine aviation, the Mediterranean Sea is, in fact, quite a densely populated area with military vessels from different countries. It will be easily noticeable by the large rainbow-colored slick. So, essentially, that's what everyone is watching for right now. But it should be noted that, after all, a submarine about 70 meters long is not such a big deal, not such a huge volume, although, of course, any environmental pollution is absolutely unwelcome.
Now, hundreds of international experts are monitoring to ensure that the Russians do not provoke an environmental disaster. The Russian Ministry of Defense is putting on a brave face, saying there's no emergency, that everything is going according to plan. At the same time, they neglect to clarify what exactly the vessel was doing in the Mediterranean Sea, given that the withdrawal of the last submarine was reported back in January. And whether there are Novorossiysk caliber missiles on board, which the Russian army launches from such submarines. And most importantly, what the command isn't mentioning at all, is there any danger to the crew's lives?
Diesel fumes are incredibly explosive, especially when one considers that a submarine is literally and completely packed with numerous and diverse electrical devices. At virtually any given moment, a tiny spark could potentially cause a devastating fire and the complete destruction of the entire submarine and its unfortunate crew. For me, the main question today is, what exactly is the Russian Federation planning to save? Is it primarily planning to save the valuable hardware? Or is it in fact planning to save the precious human lives, the people? From my personal point of view, in the unfortunate event of such a catastrophic accident, most of the crew members should have been safely taken off the ship, or indeed off the submarine, leaving behind only those dedicated sailors who are truly able to valiantly fight for the vessel's continued survivability and operational integrity. And fighting for survivability primarily means that all critical compartments of the submarine must be completely sealed, so that there is absolutely no fuel leakage whatsoever throughout the entire submarine's various compartments.
So far, hardware remains the top priority for officials at the Russian Ministry of Defense. And it's clear that the experience of the nuclear submarine Kursk, where 118 crew members died, has taught them nothing. Novorossiysk did not request assistance and, under the watchful eye of NATO anti-submarine aircraft, is heading to the port of Kronstadt, where it is supposedly expected on October 21st. According to sources from a public channel close to law enforcement, there have been 10 incidents on the submarine during its watch. If Novorossiysk makes it to the base, the crew will be lucky and will be replaced by another. Whether the Russians will be able to revive the submarine is a big question.
Breaking! Ukraine and the US have built a superweapon, a game changer on the battlefield. The jaw-dropping new strike system, unlike anything the world has seen, is ready to rewrite the rules of the war. Think Shahed-style drones, but faster, smarter, and far deadlier. Reports say this mega development could smash enemy defenses, sow panic across occupied lines, and force a decisive shift in the balance of power. Moscow is already trembling. How will this weapon reshape the front, and what does it mean for the fate of the conflict? All the explosive details coming up now.
The Ukrainian Shahed has reached a new level. Now the drone is equipped with advanced Western guidance and control systems, and production will be established both in the USA and in Europe.
It will soon go into mass production in Ukraine, the United States of America, and Germany. This is being reported by the press. The American company Otelion, together with the Ukrainian company, has successfully tested the long-range kamikaze drone Artemis LM-20. The drone is equipped with an artificial intelligence system, self-guidance, and can strike targets at distances of up to 1,600 kilometers.
At the same time, the warhead weighs 45 kilograms, which is more than enough to destroy most enemy military targets, equipment, and assets, our military adds.
The key point here is that it uses artificial intelligence, and let's say the price is quite reasonable, to put it mildly. And if the tactical and technical specifications such as speed and flight altitude are met, and as I understand it, they are, these factors have already been studied and tested, then of course things will become a bit easier for us.
It is also known that the main feature of Artemis is its navigation and targeting system, which is based on the Skynode N onboard computer from the American company Otelion. As noted, it is this system that allows the drone to target and strike even when satellite navigation is disrupted and ensures high accuracy in the final stage of flight.
The enemy's means are mostly used for jamming the GPS signal. In other words, roughly speaking, this is what helps to target more accurately. If we are talking, for example, about control channels, then yes, they do have certain systems that, for instance, can limit the capabilities of piloted drone control channels. We are talking about a system that, to a greater extent, performs automatic flight, thanks to, for example, the onboard equipment it is equipped with. Therefore, here we are saying that thanks to such capabilities, this system can bypass the enemy's electronic warfare and hit the target with minimal error. Again, this is due to the visual guidance system installed directly on this UAV.
At the same time, the company's developers have already stated that the drone has undergone battlefield testing. This has already been recognized by both the Ukrainian side and its manufacturing partners.
This drone was created together with an unnamed Ukrainian company for security reasons, and it has already undergone full-scale testing, which, according to the company's statement, included ground launch, navigation with and without GPS, long-range transit, and ground activation.
It is worth noting that the Artemis ALM-20 also features a nose camera, additional antennas, and apparently an electric engine, which experts point out is a rather unusual solution. This is done in order to achieve high results with smaller production scales by ensuring more precise targeting. After all, the camera at the final stage of the UAV's operation will allow it to strike almost without missing, including bypassing possible anti-drone defenses.
First and foremost, they are intended and will be used to destroy those targets that affect the military power of the terrorist state and its ability to conduct combat operations in Ukraine.
At the same time, joint production with the United States is far from the only international initiative of the Ukrainian defense industry. Most often, Western partners are willing to invest specifically in drones. Denmark became a pioneer in the field of joint defense production with Ukraine and was the first to invest initially in enterprises within Ukraine, and now has allocated more than 67 million euros to establish Ukrainian defense enterprises on Danish territory. Finland was also one of the first to embark on joint production with Ukraine. Back in November 2024, the Finnish defense consortium Suma Defense established a drone manufacturing enterprise in Finland in partnership with 4 Ukrainian companies. The United Kingdom has also placed an emphasis on drones. A few months ago, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer announced plans to launch joint production on British soil.
We are currently working out the details in decisions regarding joint weapons production with our partners. These are serious decisions with those who are providing the most assistance. Concrete projects mean tangible benefits for our defense. In the future, there will also be production facilities localized in Ukraine, facilities that help protect our skies. I want to thank our partners for their interest in working with Ukraine and with our industry.
At the same time, the EU has allocated 1.5 billion euros for a defense plan and cooperation with Ukraine, according to Bloomberg. The main goal of the program is to optimize the procurement and production of weapons, including joint efforts with Ukraine. So it seems that soon the Ukrainian armed forces arsenal will be significantly bolstered by joint Ukrainian Western developments.
Repression in the occupied Crimea has entered a horrifying new phase. Even Crimean Tatar women are being targeted. The Russian occupation forces, desperate to maintain control, are carrying out sweeping raids and arrests under fabricated terrorism charges linked to an imaginary global caliphate. Homes are raided, families torn apart, and fear spreads through the peninsula like wildfire. The indigenous people of Crimea are once again facing brutal persecution, this time cloaked in the Kremlin's propaganda and lies. What's fueling this new wave of hysteria, and what sinister plans is Moscow hiding behind it? Find out in our next report.
The level of human rights in occupied Crimea is approaching zero. Every day, Ukrainian human rights defenders document crimes, victims of repression, peaceful women, mothers, and female students.
The Russian Federation knows perfectly well that as long as the indigenous population remains absolutely united, they will not in any way succeed in their endeavors. They will not be able to resist, to strengthen, or to take root. That is why there is constant pressure on the indigenous population through intimidation, repression, persecution, and the imposition of heavy sentences, or through extrajudicial executions when a person goes missing and their relatives have no idea what happened to them.
Mass detentions and arrests in Crimea by the Russian security services began in 2014. Experts note that now the repressions have also become demonstratively brutal.
All these extensive searches, numerous detentions, and unduly harsh sentences are being carried out primarily to suppress internal public opinion that is in favor of the Russian Federation and its policies. This will only intensify.
Since the start of the full-scale war against Ukraine, Russian security forces have initiated several times more criminal cases against Crimeans than during all the previous years of the peninsula's occupation. Most of the courts are closed, where security forces openly abuse the defendants and seek to hand down the harshest possible sentences.
As of today, the law of the Russian Federation is in effect there. It has no reverse function except for one thing: repression, repression, and more repression.
If before February 2022 there were only 5 known cases against women with an obvious political motive, then after the invasion began, the occupiers have already opened 31 new ones. And this does not include abductions, religious cases, and proceedings against women living in the newly occupied territories.
There's nothing surprising about this because the Russian repressive machine operates exactly in this way whenever necessary. In order to sway public opinion in favor of Russian propaganda, they specifically target women, the elderly, and children. The same practice was used in Chechnya. Many times I personally saw how people who were in the same cell with me were forced to accept the conditions imposed on them because in the neighboring cell, either their sister or their wife was being held.
Women are given sentences that are average or the maximum possible term. The occupation courts demonstratively ignore mitigating circumstances such as age, having children, or caring for elderly parents. Judges often mock the defendants, commenting on their appearance and physical condition, and also restrict the defense's right to present evidence and call witnesses.
Before a person ends up imprisoned by them. Beforehand, a criminal case against this person is already prepared. And it's never the case that when you end up in court, the judge studies your case just a couple of days before. No, the judge knows from the very beginning that you will end up before them. The judge knows from the start exactly what sentence they will give you. There are no human rights here, no convention works at all, absolutely. Only one thing works here. They have a kind of slogan: if you ended up with us, it means you're guilty.
On October 15th, it became known that mass searches were carried out in the homes of Crimean Tatar women in occupied Crimea.
The search warrant was not shown to the family. The search was even conducted in the children's room. Then the security forces went down to the basement. 2 phones were confiscated. While Nemetuleva was packing her things, the security officers followed her every step. In the end, the detainee was brought to the FSB office at 7 a.m., 3 hours after the security forces arrived.
FSB officers detained 4 women: Esma Nemetulaeva, Nasiba Saidova, Elviza Alieva, and Fivzia Osmanova.
The only thing left now is to document and to speak out about it. About what is happening there. and to help in any way possible, either by getting this person out of the area or by providing some other kind of assistance. But one thing is very important, that the Ukrainian military structure does not postpone the deoccupation of these regions.
Ukraine strongly condemns yet another wave of repressions by Russian occupation authorities in Crimea against the indigenous Crimean Tatar people.
Propaganda media are spreading fabricated accusations about a women's cell allegedly promoting the ideas of a global caliphate, trying to justify the repressions and portray peaceful women, mothers, educators, and students as terrorists. Such actions are part of Moscow's systematic offensive against the Crimean Tatar people, aimed at destroying their national identity, spirituality, and right to their own land.
This demonstrative cruelty has a clear goal: to intimidate the Crimean population and suppress any manifestations of resistance. In 26 out of 31 cases, the repressions are directly linked to Ukraine.
I strongly condemn these actions of the Russian occupation authorities, which are yet another manifestation of a deliberate repressive policy and discrimination against representatives of Ukraine's indigenous people, the Crimean Tatars, on national and religious grounds. Such illegal searches and arrests are intended to intimidate the local population. They serve as a covert means of forcing the Crimean Tatars out of the peninsula.
The harshest sentence, 22 years in a penal colony, was given to a resident of Sevastopol. Nadezhda Grekova, who was accused of attempting to assassinate a Russian military official. As of September 2025, the occupation authorities are illegally holding at least 30 Crimean women in Russian penal colonies and detention centers.
Not a single crime committed by the occupiers will go unpunished. Crimea was and remains a part of Ukraine, and those who persecute Crimean Tatars today will inevitably be held accountable under international law.
The repressive system on the occupied peninsula is a tool for demonstrative intimidation and punishment, where even young women, mothers, and the elderly become the Kremlin's next targets in its campaign to suppress any form of loyalty.
At this moment, that's all from me, Maria Farafonova. Even more hellish Frontline news in our next episode. But for now, don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button. See you soon.